everybody. My name is Dan Skipbound, and this is the 52 must-see movies and why they matter, based off of the book by Robert Osborne and AMC's The Essentials. They came up with 52 movies that they deemed the essentials. They are must-see movies that everybody should see. Well, I did season one of that. I did every one of those movies from the book. And now on season two, we're going off the book. Me and some friends nominated films that we felt were essential films. And one of those films is The Good and the Bad and the Ugly. And the gentleman who nominated that film is right here. His name is Jeremy Adams. Jeremy, welcome back to the 52 must-see movies and why they matter.
I'm so excited to be here. All I have to say is wah, 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 wah.
Yeah, we're going to get into the gentleman that composed that here in a second. Obviously, this is one of those spaghetti westerns from director Sergio Leone, and it is part of the Man with No Name trilogy. And Jeremy, tell me some more about the Man with No Name trilogy. Why this film and this series of films resonates with you so much?
Well, there's a lot to say. First off, I just want to talk a little bit about Clint Eastwood. So Clint Eastwood was a up-and-coming actor in the 50s who was mainly cast in Western stuff. He was in a TV show called Rawhide, but his career was kind of stalling out once we got into the 60s. Wasn't really, getting those good roles. He was just kind of a B actor. And so he did what a lot of actors at that time were doing and went overseas and acted in some overseas stuff. And he happened to team up with a director named Sergio Leone, who he had made like a sword and sandals sort of epic movie, but now he was interested in American Westerns. He was like, I love these American Western films. I love John Ford. I'd love to try to do that. So in 1964, they made a little film called A Fistful of Dollars, which is actually an unofficial remake of the Akira Kurosawa film Rashomon. Not Rashomon, I'm sorry, Yojimbo. I can't think. It's a remake of Yojimbo, and that movie, for me, it's really great. It's this awesome unique Western. It's Italian, but it's got Clint Eastwood, and instantly he was this character, a man with no name, a guy who wandered into a town and got involved in a conflict and kicked butt, and he was just the coolest guy on the planet. And with that movie, they created a unique character and a unique style of filmmaking with this sensibility from Italy mixed with Sergio Leone's love for Italian Westerns. So that movie was a bit of a hit, definitely got some people talking. So they went on to make another movie the next year called For a Few Dollars More, which is a little bigger budget, a little more sprawling. And the most important detail I think about that movie is they brought another American actor who is another American B-movie actor over named Lee Van Cleef. And in that movie, Lee Van Cleef and Clint Eastwood team up together, and Lee Van Cleef is a Civil War veteran, and he is now a bounty hunter. And Clint Eastwood's character, they're both bounty hunters, and they're tracking a killer together, and they have kind of an uneasy alliance, and it's a really fun movie. So then, again, bit of a hit. Sergio Leone is thinking, well, I love what I'm doing here with these Westerns. I want to try to do the biggest one yet. So he decided he was going to backtrack, do a bit of a prequel, and go back to the Civil War and do a Western bounty hunter type story like he had done before, but set it against the backdrop of the Civil War. They had big, set pieces that they were going to set up, big war scenes, all of this stuff kind of juxtaposed. So it was a little bit Gone with the Wind and a little bit, bounty hunter for a few dollars more type movie. And this was the one that I was shown at a pretty young age. I know I saw all three, but The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly was the one that my parents really loved, particularly my mom. And they always showed this movie to me. And this movie has always been close to my heart because I just think it's the three characters, we'll get into them, but The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, I think that they're three legendary characters. I think all three actors are incredible. And the movie, we'll talk about the music, we'll talk about the gunfights and everything that's in this film. If you want like a Western, this has everything for me personally. It also is a big inspiration on other filmmakers such as Quentin Tarantino, which is something we'll get into. So it speaks to me on that level. And also I just want to say that, like I said, he was a B-movie actor. He wasn't doing much in the U.S. These movies put Clint Eastwood on the map. And because of this film in particular, we have Clint Eastwood as the star, as the director, as the person that we know him today and what he would go on to do in the 70s and 80s. And I think you got to, really give these movies credit that this Italian guy who didn't even speak English was able to work with this actor and create this character and create this series that would launch Clint.
Well, that's a lot that you're saying there to get us started here.
Yeah.
And you mentioned a couple of the actors. Clint Eastwood obviously plays the character of Blondie, and that's if you know the trilogy, it's the Man with No Name trilogy.
Yeah.
Blondie's not a name, so
he only ever has nicknames. He only has nicknames.
And and also Lee Van Cleef plays a character by the name of Angel Eyes.
Yep.
And then we have another famous villain character who we've seen in a few westerns. He was kind of typecast in these type of roles, and that's Eli Wallach, and he plays Tuco. And if you watch TV shows and movies, Tuco seems to be a character that you see portrayed in a lot of different things. A character named Tuco, that seems like a typical
directly referenced in the show Breaking Bad, the great TV series.
Bingo.
They directly referenced Tuco in that series. And I just have to say real quick, Eli Wallach, he was a actor from the Actors Studio, which was a very important movement in the late 40s and early 50s. He actually worked with Marlon Brando and actors like that in The Method, which was a new form of acting that really kind of revolutionized stage and film in that time period. And you can really see in this film, as we'll go on, how much he invested himself in a character and brought a lot of those method techniques that really kind of make his performance and his characters stand out. So that's another kind of thing in the background here.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I could go on all day about the actor studio, but we're not talking about that. A couple small role characters that are in the movie. Rada Rasimov, she plays a female love interest in the movie. Mario Braga, he's just another kind of guy that they come across in the movie. And
I just want to say real quick, he's one of the main bodyguard bad guys in Fistful of Dollars. And he plays a similar role here. So it's kind of cool if you watch the whole trilogy, you can see actors kind of recur and they're almost kind of sort of playing the same character, but in different ways. So that's kind of a fun thing when you watch the trilogy.
And also Aldo or Grief.
Mm-hmm.
That's a difficult name to pronounce.
Some tough Italian names, yes.
Yeah. Those are some extra characters, but the main three are the three that Jeremy and I mentioned. But another character in the movie is the score by a gentleman that won an Oscar not that long ago, Ennio Morricone. Talk to me about Ennio Morricone.
Well, I talked about Sergio Leone and how he loved Westerns and, how he was inspired to kind of want to put his own stamp as an Italian filmmaker on kind of the American Western. And I think that also applies to Ennio Morricone, who is like taking the techniques, the instruments, the sounds of like Italian music and more international music and kind of giving them that Western spin. And he did it really wonderfully in A Fistful of Dollars. That's a great theme. Again, for a few dollars more, there was a great theme in that too, but he also was kind of expanding and having other themes in that movie. There's like a music box that plays a tune in that film, and then that tune of the music box actually becomes an important musical theme that gets played with orchestra. And he was really like getting really intricate and doing cool things in that film. And then I just think it all came to a head in this film where you have one of the most iconic, like not just Western themes, but for me, one of the most iconic movie themes you ever had, where he actually does like the three characters, they each have their own little motif in the music. So you get the good, you get the bad, and you ugly, all of them have their own little motif. It's all played together. There's a mix of vocals and guitar and strings and all of this stuff that just, it as soon as you hear it, it's so memorable. But as we'll go on, it's not just that people think it's kind of like Jaws. People just think, oh, Jaws is the Jaws theme. Well, Jaws actually has a lot of really great music and a lot of great themes. And it's really one of John Williams's like masterful scores. Same thing here. There's incredible music throughout this. There's a scene at the end in a cemetery, which for me is like one of the most beautiful jaw-dropping pieces of music. The way it goes with the actual filming of the scene, the way that it's edited, it's all just so powerful. And it's an incredible score. And yeah, it's got that Western vibe to it, but it also has, you know, these other tones that Ennio brought to it. And again, these movies launched him, and he went on to be one of the most prolific composers we've ever had, working both Hollywood and overseas. And eventually, like you said, won an Oscar for a Quentin Tarantino movie, which was largely inspired by these movies, The Hateful Eight.
Yeah, I knew you were going to get back around to Quentin Tarantino.
Yeah.
Once I brought up that Oscar. All right, so like we always do, we always spoil these movies.
Yeah.
You know, it's so you can understand the films and then go and watch it yourself and see how we are breaking it down and so forth. So if you didn't expect us, if this is the first episode you've watched, we will spoil the film because we're breaking it down scene by scene and so forth. And so that's what this show does, and that's what every episode of the show does. So I just wanted to get that in there. So we get back. We're going to get into the movie here, and I have my notes. So Jeremy, just break in whenever you feel like. Yeah. We got two men walking, and then we get guns firing, and then we got a guy.
They're walking into a bar looking for somebody. They got their guns cocked. They're going in to get somebody.
And then there's a guy who runs out with the chicken. This is how the movie starts.
Jumps out of the window, yes, holding chicken.
So you're just like, okay, this is what I'm getting myself in.
One of my favorite introductions, and which character is that, Dan?
Well, I mean, that's the Ugly.
That's Tuco, the Ugly. Yes, he's the first one we're introduced to. And I just want to personally say, to me, this movie he is really the lead character. I think that the arc in the movie is him. And I think the fact that he's the first character we see in such a memorable way, jumping out of the windows, guys are going after him. I think that wasn't an accident, that they're really kind of telling us this is really what this movie is going to largely be about, is about this guy. So,
yeah, he definitely, he's really the glue.
Yeah.
Keeps the whole movie together. He really is. He really is. And I got a well. We got a man on a horse, and we got men eating, and we got Jackson hiding. I got Jackson hiding.
It's a boy. Yeah, they're. Is it the son?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think you're talking about the scene. So we've got a family. They're the father of the family's eating breakfast, and there's a son going out to the well, and then somebody comes to pay them a visit, and things don't go very well. I think we probably have a good idea which character we're being introduced to now.
Yeah. And they want to know about a man by the name of Bill Carson.
Bill Carson.
And he pays 1,000 gold pieces to find out about a man by the name of Bill Carson.
Yeah.
And then when he goes by a different name, Bill Carson isn't necessarily his name. He goes by a different name. So that's why nobody knows. A lot of the time we're looking for Bill Carson, but nobody knows who Bill Carson is because he goes by a different name.
Yeah. So just to set it up a little bit. So basically we get his character coming to visit this family, and we learn pretty quickly this character is the character who they referred to as Angel Eyes, and he's the bad of the title, and he's basically interrogating this man and his family to find out about this guy Bill Carson, and he's been hired by another guy, and you get the idea that there is some sort of missing gold or something going on, and it's a very tense scene as they're eating together at this table, and it's like, you know, such tension in people eating together. And I just want to say, I think this is pretty much directly lifted in the opening of the, again, to bring him up, Quentin Tarantino film Inglourious Basterds, where we have Hans Landa going to visit a Jewish farmer and interrogating him about Jews that are, not a Jewish farmer, a French farmer. Goes to visit the French farmer. He's interrogating him about Jews that have been hidden. This is almost like beat for beat the same scene as Angel Eyes going to interrogate this farmer about missing gold. So there's, you know, these films influence Tarantino so much, and there's such similar tension in the scene, and it's you're just on, you know, it's like any like horror film or thriller, you're on the edge of your seat because you know this guy, you could just tell this guy's bad and he's up to no good, and this whole family's in danger. Yeah, and it sets up the stakes of the movie really well.
Yeah, oh yeah. Well, you get to know who this guy is because he shoots a man dead, then shoots another man, and then
and then he goes to the guy who hired him, who's a sickly guy. He's in bed. This is the guy that hired him to get the money. And then we find out what he does with this guy who hired him, how he pays him back.
He's looking for a cash box. You know, he knows the guy. He knows there's this. He goes to a store. And the guy in the store is like, you know, I don't have any money. I don't have anything. Don't, you know, but he knows the guy's got money in the store, and he's like, "Hey, $1,000, $500, $1,000, $2,000," and he ends up basically getting the money out of the guy from the store at the cash box, and then then shoots him. You know, he did. We find out why he's the bad guy, because he's shooting everybody. He's killing everybody.
Yeah, he basically, what happened was he got hired to find this money that it was the soldiers. It was Confederate soldiers that stole. They have this loot from the war, and another guy hired him to track it down. And when he goes back to the guy who hired him, he kills the guy, puts a pillow on his head, and shoots him through the pillow. And now he's going to go get the money on his own. So he betrays the guy who hired him. And this is the kind of guy that he is. He just has no moral code at all. He's just out, like, he'll betray anyone, and he's just out for money. And it's terrifying.
Yeah. And so then we get back to Tuco, and we find out why Tuco was being hanged. Mm-hmm. He was being hanged for murder and armed robbery, and he's got a bounty on his head of $2,000.
Yeah.
And this is, so we go back from the ugly to the bad. And we don't get to the good until we find out that somebody saves him.
Yeah. So basically, the guys in the opening scene were most likely bounty hunters that were trying to catch Tuco, because Tuco is a convict. He's got all these charges against him. But now we see him. He's been captured. They're going to hang him. They're reading all his charges. Well, who captured him? Those guys didn't. What bounty hunter brought him in? Somebody got him. So what's going on? We don't know. There's kind of a disconnect between those scenes. And then that's when we find out and we get our reveal of the other character.
Yeah. Good is Blondie. Blondie is Clint Eastwood, like I said. And he's got this scam going with Tuco, where he takes them to these towns and cashes in the reward, and then he shoots the rope, allowing him to escape, and the two of them escape, and then they do it all over again in a different town. And they got the scam going on, and and all of a sudden, Clint Eastwood, Blondie decide, you know what? I don't want to do this anymore.
By the way, I think it's kind of dumb that they hang Tuco on a horse. Like, he's always sitting on a horse when they're hanging him. It's like, you'd think that they would be smarter than that, especially since he keeps escaping from town to town. Like, don't hang him on a horse, because as soon as he shoots the rope, the horse just runs off and he's free. This is a little funny detail.
You know, the one time he falls off the horse and the horse runs. And so then he said, "Oh, you did it, girl!" He's like running, he's trying to and stuff. But
also, how badass is it? Like, we know right away that Clint's a badass because he shoots their hats off. It's not enough for him to shoot the rope. He's got to shoot their hats off too, of all the guys standing there. It's so great.
Yeah, that's why they know. No, we ain't messing with this guy.
Yeah,
he got the rope and he shot all our hats off. Like, oh, nope, no thanks. Not getting involved with this guy if we want to keep our lives.
And I'm sorry, one little thing. So in all of these movies, there's that sound, that iconic sound of the rifle when they shoot it, especially when Clint shoots his rifle. It's that pow sound that the rifle makes. That's actually the sound of cannon fire. Like they took a small cannon, fired it off, and that's the sound that they use for all the rifle shots. And it ramps it up. It makes it larger than life. Like that Sergio Leone doesn't want you to take all this stuff very literally. Like this is larger than life. This is mythic stuff, and those little details that kind of ramp it up and make you realize that this is like this mythic epic thing that you're watching.
And in the term spaghetti western means, guess what, these people are Italian, they don't speak English, so you get dubbed you get dubbed English from anybody that's not Eli Wallach, Angel Eyes, or Clint Eastwood.
Not well dubbed either, by the way.
No, not at all. Very bad. And it's so noticeable. It's very, very noticeable.
And as a kid, I always thought that was just normal. Like, I didn't realize that there was, an issue there. I'm like, oh, well, people's words don't match their mouth. I saw that in Godzilla. I saw that in the Clint Eastwood movies. I saw it in Bruce Lee movies. I guess that's just normal.
Yeah. And so Angel Eyes is kind of moving along, trying to track down the money and Bill Carson. And so he runs across Maria, and Maria gets captured by Angel Eyes, and he basically interrogates her.
Brutal scene.
For information. He slaps her around pretty good. This is not necessarily something you see in movies back then. You didn't see a lot of it.
And I don't think it's something you would see now. Like it's very shocking to watch that, especially today, to see that. But, unlike a lot of movies from that era, like this, to me, it works because this is a bad man and he's doing something horrible, and it really creates an impact in the story. So even though it's a horrible thing to see in a movie, I think that it kind of works in the story that he's doing these things.
And so then we go back to Tuco, and Tuco, when Blondie decides he's going to break it off with him, he takes what money. This is the one thing he always does. He takes what he believes is his and gives you what he believes is yours.
Yeah.
So what he did is he gives him some money, what he believes was his cut of the scam that they were running, and he had his own money. And so Tuco had some money. So when Clint Eastwood
leaves him in the desert, right?
Yeah, he leaves him. He eventually gets to the same store that Angel Eyes
walks across the desert, is dying of thirst, finds like the horse trough, drinks out of it, and then goes to the store. One thing I just wanted to say, because you put it in my head before we go to the next scene, is look, these are all criminals. Like, they're not good guys. Like, even though it's the good, the bad, and the ugly, like, there really is no good. Like, it's almost kind of like they're taking a page from film noir films of earlier, where there's no black or white. It's all just shades of gray. But, our hero character, played by Clint Eastwood, at least he has a code. Like you said, when he decides to break partnership with Tuco and does this kind of really mean thing by leaving him in the desert, he still leaves him his cut of the money. Like, he doesn't just take off with all the money. Like we see the difference with Angel Eyes. Angel Eyes, he's hired by a guy, and then he just kills the guy and goes to get the money for himself. Well, Blondie wouldn't do that. He's a criminal. He's not a good, nice guy, but he still at least has some sort of a code that he follows. And that's kind of what we're going to be following throughout the movie, is just the way that these different criminals interact, and our allegiances kind of fall on that level.
Yeah, absolutely. In a line that he says, a quote that I thought was very good too, he says, "Those who have friends and those who are lonely."
Mm-hmm.
It basically, he's referring to himself.
Yeah.
He's like, how he broke it off with Tuco. He's basically saying, you know what? I'm sick of you. I'm a loner. I'm by myself. I don't want to have anything to do with you. But you know what? You know what's going to happen in this film. So we're going to, So he ends up in the store. Tuco ends up in the store. He ends up getting some whiskey. He gets some potatoes. And then the guy starts showing him all these guns, and he has this problem with all these pistols. He doesn't like the pistols, but what he does do is he takes a bunch of the pistols apart and puts them together to make a gun that he was happy with.
Yeah.
That he liked. And so that was kind of interesting to take all the guns apart and put it.
And then does he pay for it?
Yeah.
And then, oh, I like this gun. I'll be taking it. He holds the gun on the guy, of course.
Yeah.
I just want to say one more thing real quick is that this used to happen a lot, with movies in general, but especially with movies that came from other countries, like there would be a lot of different cuts and edits. So there were different versions of The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly that were different lengths. And like as a kid, I would see like a short, like 2-hour version of this movie, whereas the full version is like 2 hours and 50 minutes. So this scene, the first many times that I saw this movie, the scene in the gun store was not in it. And there were a lot of scenes that were missing. And then later on, I got to see a more full cut. Like eventually they released a VHS that had 2 tapes in the 90s. So it was like the longer version of the movie. Still wasn't the full version, but it was like more of it. And then eventually on Blu-ray, I got to see the full cut. But yeah, when I eventually saw the gun store scene, I'm like, man, this is such a great scene. It's more of this character that I love. And it was like discovering treasure, getting to see these scenes that I hadn't seen before because the movie had been kind of cut and messed with.
It's a 3-hour movie.
3-hour
movie.
And it's full version. Yeah, it is 3 hours. That's right.
Yeah, if you get the proper. And so he ends up going into a place that I believe he's got people that he knows that were there. Mm-hmm. And it turns out, I think it's his brothers. He goes to this place, a cave. I don't know if it's a cave or what it is, because you don't see how. I don't remember how he got in there. I just remember he's inside of a thing, and then there's a hole in the roof, and then come through the roof. I believe these guys are his brothers, if I'm not mistaken. They were his brothers, and he eventually comes across his brothers.
Tuco, you're talking about?
Yeah, Tuco.
I think what it might be is they were his former gang.
Okay.
I think they were a former gang that he had worked with before, pulling crimes and stuff.
Okay, because
they were gang members that like outlaw desperados that he had ridden with. You see that a lot. That's an ongoing motif in westerns. Like, oh yeah, I used to run with that guy, and then oh yeah, I also used to pull jobs with that guy. Like from town to town, all these different desperados would know each other and have other gangs that they're affiliated with.
Okay, yeah, I couldn't remember.
And and they're all Mexican. They're all from Mexico. Like Tuco, we haven't mentioned this yet, but he's a Mexican character, not played by a Mexican actor because it was that time. But this is like Mexican desperados that he had ridden with at some point.
And so these guys are all. So he plans to try to go back and get Blondie or the Good from the title. So these guys all help him try to go after Blondie, and so they set him up in a hotel. He's in a hotel. He is, and a bomb goes off.
I think this is really the point in the movie where you really start to realize that the Civil War is in full effect because there's a lot of cannon fire and stuff just outside of town. There's like a battle going off nearby, and we're starting to see more people in different. We were starting to see Union soldiers, Confederate soldiers, kind of moving through the country. So yes, this is definitely in the midst of the war. As I mentioned before, this movie is actually a prequel to the other $2 films, which were post-war. This is right during the middle of the Civil War. Actually, 1862 is the official year where it takes place. So it's pretty early in the war. Things are just kind of intensifying. And that's kind of the backdrop, especially in this scene where you're hearing all of the war stuff going on.
And so what ends up happening is everybody is kind of in the same place. And the bad is going off trying to look. He thinks he's honing in on
Bill Carson. Yeah.
But he doesn't know that Blondie is Bill Carson or what Tuco has to do with all this. So they're all kind of similarly in the same place. But like you said, the Civil War is going on. So
at this point, it's all unrelated. Like there's no connection at this point between what's going on with Clint Eastwood and Tuco and what's going on with Angel Eyes. They're like two different storylines. And we're at this point, like, I don't even know how this stuff connects. And eventually when it does connect, it's pretty amazing. But at this point, we don't know what's going on. It's just, they basically get word that Clint Eastwood's character is in town. So, of course, Tuco's going to get revenge on him. So, and then at the same time, Angel Eyes feels that he's closing in on Bill Carson.
And so we get eventually Tuco catches up to him after the bomb goes off. Tuco catches up to Blondie, and what he did to him, he's now going to do to him. And so he ends up walking 70 miles through the desert.
I got to backtrack real quick. So he catches him in the hotel room. And he has his desperados are coming up to the door, and Clint's sitting there. He's ready. He's not going to let these guys get the drop on him. And then he takes the guys out, and then Tuco's right behind him, and he says, "Now this is important in this movie. Dialogue is important. There's a lot of what I call like setup and payoff dialogue, where there's going to be a cool line of dialogue, and that's going to come back later." So Tuco comes in, gets the drop on Blondie, and says, "There's two kinds of people in this world. Those who come in by the door and those who come in through the window." And that's how he gets Blondie. And then right when he's about to get Blondie, cannonball comes in from the war, nails the whole hotel, and Blondie, it's a really awesome moment there. So, and then, that line about there's two kinds of people in the world is going to resurface in different ways throughout the rest of the film.
And that is, like you said, that's a callback to the other line in a lot of ways. Those who have friends and those who are family.
And
by the door and come by in for the window. So
and the two kinds of people thing will play into the end of the film when we get there.
That's a callback that keeps coming back.
Yeah, exactly.
Film. And so there's a lot of this kind of thing where these guys are in the desert. So I'm not going to really get into a whole lot of it, except
there's the great scene where Tuco has Clint. And he's doing it to him. All right, you got to walk through the desert like I did. Except, he wants to enjoy it. So he's sitting on a little donkey, drinking water, making, Clint Eastwood trek through the desert as revenge for what he did to him. And really good, effective makeup as you see Blondie's skin from the sun, like turning, like he's sunburned, his skin's falling off, he's dying of thirst, and then and then what happens? And then the two storylines collide.
Yeah, well, he's washing his feet in the bucket. He's doing things to really, and then he kicks the bucket over because Clint, even though it's soapy water that had his feet in it, he still wants
to drink it.
Drink it, and he's like, no, kicks the bucket over, and he's not going to give him any water. And so what ends up happening is a carriage comes running by.
Yeah, it's wild. Like the horses have gone wild, and they're just running the carriage through the desert. Obviously, no one's manning the horses.
Yeah, everybody, and then they look inside.
And it crashes. They look inside, and these guys look like they've been shot, and they're dying, and they're soldiers.
Yeah, and there's soldiers, but there's one guy alive.
Mm-hmm.
And he starts talking to Tuco. And he starts telling him about the gold, which is really a MacGuffin in a lot of ways. It's a MacGuffin because
I can tell you where hidden money is, basically. If you get me water and if you help me, and then we're starting to put together all this stuff that Angel Eyes has been talking about and what he's been off following. We're starting to kind of put this together with what's going on here with these Confederate soldiers.
Because the guy that Angel Eyes is looking for is Bill Carson. And then he tells him his name. He says, "My name is Bill Carson."
Mm-hmm.
But he's like dying. And he's like running over there trying to get some water. And
Tuco runs off, goes to find water, goes up this hill. He's going to come back. Don't die. Comes back, looks down at the carriage. And what's happening? This is maybe my favorite moment in the movie.
Clint
has crawled up to the carriage and started talking to Bill Carson, and he runs up there, and now he's dead. Bill Carson's dead.
Yeah.
And and then Tuco's freaking out, and he's like, and he's mad, he's gonna kill Clint. And what Clint says in his awesome Clint way, "If you kill me, you'll never find out where that money is." And he has been told the secret.
That's right.
They both got one half of it. So the Tuco got one part of the information, Blondie got the other half, and of course Blondie's not going to tell him his part. So they've got to work together again.
Now they got to work together. The two guys hated each other.
And the pivot that Tuco makes, where he goes from, you know, tormenting this guy, wanting to kill this guy, to "Don't die, Blondie, don't die. I'll get you water. I'll get you water." He's got to give him money because now he's the one that has the information to get this money. And oh, it's so great. These are always the scenes that I love so much watching with my mom. Like, this is a really funny movie. I mean, it's really dark and like thrilling, but then it's really funny at times. And these actors are just so fun to watch in these moments. This is what really kind of makes this movie sing to me in a lot of ways.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, these like contradictory scenes.
Yeah.
Of the, you know, he's tormenting him. He's walking through the death.
It's the whole movie too. Like, these guys are constantly turning on each other, and it's so fun to watch. Like, they're working together, and then they're at odds, and then they're working together again, and it's so much fun. And it's just, I love this kind of storytelling where you don't know what's going on, and then you know what's going on. Like, the movie guides you in, and then this happens, and now we know they're after the same thing that Angel Eyes is after. Now we're off on this story. And I just love the buildup. Like, they don't just, like, I feel like a movie today would be impatient, and they would just tell you, they would hit you with everything in the first 10 minutes. Okay, everyone's off to get the money, and they're all fighting each other. But this movie, it gets you into the characters, gets you into the world, the tone, everything. And then, you know, what are we, like 40, 50 minutes into the movie now? And now now we're all into the story, and we're on the journey now with what all of their objectives are lined up. But it gets you there. It takes the time, and that's what I think makes some of these older movies so great, is that it's about the character, it's about the build-up, and not just, you know, bang, 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 let's get through the story, because those movies are just not as memorable. When that's all they do is just plot, action, action. You're not as invested in the storytelling and the characters and the filmmaking, so they don't make as much of an impression on you.
No, absolutely right. I mean, you know, once you get the buildup of these characters, and you see what their motivations are and where they're coming from, and then the things that they do leading up to this point, you as a viewer understand who you want to root for, who you want to see come out on top.
And again, they're not good guys. Like, none of them are good guys, and yet you're interested. You don't have to like a character to have a good movie. A lot of people say that, I only watch a movie if I like the characters. No, that's not good storytelling always. Like, you can have, you know, characters that aren't necessarily good people, but they're interesting. They have an agenda that you can follow. They have a goal, and that's good storytelling. And I think that's, you know, really great in movies like this. Like, you know, and it's just fun in this movie. It's like, well, I don't hate him as much as that guy, so I guess I'll root for him because he's not as bad as that other guy.
Yeah. So what ends up happening is to get Blondie back in shape. Tuco pretends to be a rebel soldier. He actually pretends to be Bill Carson, and they end up going into a rebel camp.
Yes. This is one of the scenes that I never saw growing up. This was a scene that had been cut with the scene at the rebel camp, I think.
And so they end up helping him out, but then they have to escape. They end up escaping, and he remembers he talks to somebody, and they say, "Hey, where's this church? Where's this monastery or whatever?" And they tell him, you know, past the rebel camp is where the monastery or the church. So he ends up taking Blondie again, take him to someone who will actually help him out.
Yeah.
This time he takes him to a church, and it turns out there's somebody in the church, but they're not there just yet.
Yeah.
The people keep helping. Is Blondie okay? What can I do? Is he all right? Does he need water?
The nuns are helping him. They have medical training and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. And then he starts praying. You start seeing him pray because he doesn't want to see Blondie die, because Blondie's got half the information that he needs
for the money,
for the gold. So, and then we get this whole scene where, once again, Clint Eastwood has a great line. He breaks into the room because he hadn't seen him for a while. Tuco hadn't seen him. He doesn't know what kind of condition he's in. And he ends up saying, going into the room, and he sees him in the church, and he goes, "We're all alone in this world. We only have each other." classic line. Classic line that Clint Eastwood says, because really, who else do each one of them have? They only have each other.
And it's also very sarcastic, because it's just like, yeah, we need each other so we can get this money. It's not like we actually care about each other, but I'm gonna say it as if it's a wonderful thing. But I'm really just saying we gotta get the money. So is this the point at which the priest comes back?
Yes.
So this to me is where the movie jumps to another level, because it's a fun movie about these desperados. They're trying to get gold. There's shootouts. There's all this stuff going on. But this is where we see that Sergio Leone has another gear where he actually can bring some humanity and some emotion into the story. And at this point, we get their priest character, which we get another dimension in this film.
Yeah, because we didn't know why he was looking for this priest. He kept on asking, what's his name back yet? What's his name back yet? I mean, I can't remember the name.
Yeah.
And it turns out that it's his brother.
His brother, yes.
It's his brother, and they have a pretty big argument about their parents and what he did for the parents and what he didn't do for the parents, and who left.
Yeah, basically the priest is all high and mighty with Tuco, saying, you're a desperado, you're a criminal. I'm the good guy because I went and became a priest and I do this work, and you're just this piece of crap criminal. But Tuco comes back at him with, where were you when our parents were dying, when our parents were sick? I was the one that was there. I cared for the parents. You were off at the ministry, learning to be a priest. You weren't there for them. I was the one that was there. So you get this conflict of, who's the better person? Why is he really a bad person? There's more going on there, and you see the emotion between these two brothers and all of the baggage. And you really see Tuco, as much as he's this criminal and this guy, this bad guy, he is somebody who's been through stuff in his life. There is some psychology and some emotion to him. That he's not just a one-dimensional character at all. And I just think these scenes are really valuable in the movie. It kind of showing that. And again, to me, this is Tuco's movie. Like, we never get a scene like, this with the other characters where we learn their backstory or get a view into who they really are as people. We only get that with Tuco. And that's, I think, what elevates the movie, is that we have this central character who really is a three-dimensional character that has an arc and a story that's going on. Yeah,
you're absolutely right. And I don't know if this is part of this other quote that I already read, but another quote that I don't remember who says it. I can't remember who says it, but it says, "It's good to know you're my good friend. You're looking out for me." Is that did Clint Eastwood? Did Blondie?
I believe that's what Blondie says. Yes. When he comes to him, when he's basically rehabilitated him and gotten him well, and he's like, "Oh, I'm good to have such a good friend looking out for me." When he knows it's just about the money, so again, he's digging at him.
These guys finally, he's doing good. They decide, okay, it's time to get out of the church and get going.
Yeah. And again, the brothers part on bad terms. The priest doesn't approve of them. There's bad blood and everything. But when they're leaving, to me, this is the key Tuco moment of the movie. They're driving away. He's with Clint, and he's like, and then he's like, my brother, man, he loves me. He thinks I'm the best. He just goes on this whole speech about how his brother loves him and looks up to him and all this stuff. And Clint sees right through it and totally, knows it's all BS and what the real truth is, because he's not an idiot, but he just kind of lets him talk and lets him say it, doesn't butt in, doesn't contradict him. And it's like, that's a key moment between these two guys for me, where everyone knows the score, yet you let people, kind of keep up their lies. That's kind of the way that these people live. And that is Tuco to me. Like, this lies, he's always telling lies, but yet, it's like, you got to let him do it, because that's just how he gets through the day.
Yeah, absolutely. And so once these guys leave, they just can't stay out of predicaments, or they can't stay out of getting in trouble. Blondie and Tuco become prisoners of war again.
Well, it's that great moment. They're going through the desert, and there's like kind of a sandstorm, or it's like the dust storm, and they see these soldiers coming toward them, and they're clad in gray. So they're Confederate soldiers, and they've been impersonating Confederate soldiers because that's what Bill Carson was. They still have the stagecoach. So he's like, "Long live General Lee! Long live the Confederacy!" And then the soldiers come up. The guy starts wiping the dust off his uniform, and of course it's blue. They're Union soldiers, and then so they're going to be captured because they think they're Confederates. And at this point, what can they say? If we're not Confederates, then they'll know they were impersonating soldiers, which is even worse. So what can they do? So yeah, then they're captured. It's such a hilarious moment in the movie.
Yeah, that's where all the serious stuff that happens, you have those moments.
There's always, and even when bad things happen, they happen in funny ways sometimes.
Yeah.
Sergio Leone always had that great sense of humor, that wink.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And then this is where we get back to the bad. Angel Eyes.
And the reveal of who he actually is, which I think is a little bit of a comment from the filmmakers. He's not just this evil guy. He is a Union soldier and a pretty high-ranking one.
He's a sergeant. Union Army.
Yeah.
And when he sees these guys there, of course, he asks them, "What's your name?" And he says, "Bill Carson." And he knows it's not Bill Carson. He knows it's Tuco.
They know each other. Yeah,
they know each other. Yeah. So he knows it's not. But he doesn't say anything.
Mm-hmm.
What he does,
when he hears that name, Bill Carson, he's like, "Oh man, these guys, they know what I need to know."
Yep. That was the magic thing for him because if he knows who Bill Carson is, then he knows how to get the gold. So what he does is he plays it off. He puts him in the thing. Then he says, "Hey, go get Tuco. Go get Bill Carson and tell him to come over here," and invites him back to eat dinner with him. A guest, it makes him a guest in his
barracks,
and gives him food and stuff. But then the real stuff starts coming out. He starts to torture him.
Yeah, he starts interrogating Tuco. And Tuco's not going to tell him anything because he wants the money, and then it escalates pretty quickly.
Yeah, because he wants to know the information, but he has this guy working for him that's not a nice guy, a big guy.
That's the big hulking guy played by Maria Brega, who, if you're following these movies, you saw him beat Clint Eastwood nearly half to death in a fistful of dollars. So you have a feeling now watching the third movie when you see this guy that something bad's about to happen.
And that part of it was, once the interrogation starts, "Hey, do you like music?" "I like music."
So
looks out the window.
They get a guy playing the violin,
and the band starts playing, and the guy starts playing the violin, and the band doesn't stop. The band doesn't stop until he tells them to stop, or he gives them a signal to stop, which means the interrogation goes along. They're beating the crap out of Tuco, just bashing him. He's asking him the information, and then we get that great shot of the violin player playing, and a tear drops as he knows. And I think in that what they're telling us in that moment is this something that has happened a lot. Like they've tortured a lot of guys in there, and Angel Eyes has done this over and over again. And these poor guys, what can they do? They just play their music while they know horrible things are happening. And these are supposed to be the good guys. This is the Union soldiers. These are the guys who are going to win the war. And yet in any system, there's corruption and there's bad guys and there are people that are only out for themselves. And I think that's kind of one of the themes of this movie is, the most evil guy of them all is the guy who's a fairly high-ranking soldier in Lincoln's army. So, we can't really trust anyone in this world. Like anyone can be corrupted. And sometimes the so-called best of us are the ones that are the worst, the most corrupt. The criminals and the thieves are the ones that are actually, we like a little more. They actually have a little more code than these guys who are, on the right side. And so he ends up giving him the information he needs. Tuco couldn't take it any longer. And basically he's in pretty rough shape. So this is when he goes to get Blondie, and
he gives it up, right? He gives up his half of the information.
Yeah.
They get it out of Tuco, so now they go to Clint, and you're like, okay, well, are they going to torture Clint now?
And of course, he doesn't torture Clint because he knows he's not going to get the information out.
He knows it's not going to work.
He knew he could get it out of Tuco.
Yeah.
And so he got the graveyard. He knew where the graveyard. So then
Sad Hill.
Instead of getting the information out of Blondie, Clint Eastwood, he throws him a bunch of clothes, and he changes his clothes, and they go looking for the graveyard. They do, and the $200,000 and whatnot, and that leaves Tuco behind. Tuco gets left behind, but something that Angel Eyes didn't realize was Clint wasn't just nobody. He wasn't just because he had that information doesn't mean anybody. And he knew. He said, "Oh, this." He sets him up with a group of guys that were in the woods, and he shoots one of them in the foot.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, "All right, come on out, guys. I know you're all there." And then he counts them all up, and he goes, "Oh, 6, the perfect number." And he says, "Why is that?" He says, "I got 6 bullets in my gun." I got 6 bullets in my gun. I was like, so "Yeah." Great line that was,
Yeah.
And we go back to Tuco at this point, and eventually, like all these sniveling, weaselly kind of guys, they always seem to get out. They always seem to get away.
They always find a way out.
They don't die. They keep coming back. And the big guy that helped
takes him on the train, right?
Yeah, the big guy that helped Angel Eyes torture Tuco. Yeah. Finally
takes him on a train. If I'm not mistaken, I think they're taking him to like Andersonville or something, which is like a prison for enemy soldiers. So even though they know he's not actually a Confederate soldier, I think they're taking him to the prison camp because, the Angel Eyes just wants to get rid of him. So they're transporting him. And then he's on the train with the guy, and he says he's got to go to the bathroom.
and so, I mean, this guy, you knew this guy had it coming for what he did.
It's so great how he gets it. Like, I gotta go to the bathroom. You're right, go over there. So he goes to the door, the edge of the train to pee outside as it's going by. But they're chained together. They're on a chain. That's how he's holding Tuco. And then Tuco
he falls. He
jumps out of the train. Yeah.
They fall, and he falls on top of him.
Yeah.
So he takes the brunt of the blow when they fell out of the train.
Yeah.
So he's got the cushion. Tuco's got the cushion of landing on the guy, and then they roll over, and then he hits him overhead with a rock. Hits him overhead with a rock. So he gets his revenge on the guy.
But then there's the agonizing moment where he's got to still get off the chain. So he has to drag this hulking guy who's now dead up this hill, up to the train track, so he can get him on the train track and then have the train run the chain over. There's these great little moments that are so like tense and yet so interesting and memorable that get peppered throughout the movie that,
And then so we know now that Blondie and Angel Eyes and his crew are getting close to the graveyard.
Yeah, but Sad Hill.
They end up running across Civil War going on.
Yeah, we're full on into a battle at this point. Unfortunately, it's like a war. It's a soldier's graveyard. So there's a big station set up near where the graveyard is that they have to kind of get through the middle of this big battle to try to get there.
And so Tuco eventually does the same thing. He ends up but he goes into a house, and they're all like skulking around, like trying to find their way around while the war's going. Bombs are being. So what happens is Clint hears a gun go off, and he realizes that's not just any gun. That's a gun that somebody he knew he had. So
because it was custom made, had a unique sound.
Yeah, had a unique sound. So he starts walking around, and Angel Eyes like, "Hey, guy, go follow him." And then he's following him. Then Clint Blondie loses him, and he ends up killing that guy. And so he ends up walking around. But then we go to Tuco, who's in a house. He's like, "Holy crap! Look at this! There's a bath here." Decides he's going to take a bath.
Oh, love that scene.
And a guy who had it out for him.
He was, if I'm not mistaken, in the beginning.
Was he?
The very opening scene, he was one of the guys who was tracking Tuco, and then I think he got shot or got injured or something in the skirmish. So he's even hates Tuco more now and is out for him. So he basically corners him in the bathtub, and so Tuco's sitting there, he's defenseless in the bathtub. Guy comes up, "I've been tracking you. I've been for so long. I'm gonna get you." This is one of the greatest moments of the movie. And
he starts talking about how to learn. He had to learn how to shoot left-handed.
Yeah, because his hand got injured in one of
Yeah.
the skirmishes with Tuco. Yeah.
And what he says is, "Hey, don't talk."
Yeah. So then Tuco of course had a gun in the bathtub, and he
Yeah.
shoots him from out of the water, shoots the guy dead. Guy falls down. Tuco, one of my favorite lines in any movie: "If you're gonna shoot, don't talk."
Talk. Yeah, don't talk.
It's like every James Bond villain, Don't just kill James Bond. Don't talk.
Then that's where what was it? And then eventually Blondie finds him.
Yeah.
And they become a team again. And Angel Eyes realizes this, that now it's 5 against 2.
Yeah.
In this town, this ramshacked town with bombs blowing up the house. It looked like a World War II house. No, it looked like a World War II town, not even a Civil War town, but because that's how bad this place looked.
Yeah.
And so they have to kill all the guys that was with Angel Eyes. And they take them out because there was 5 of them. They take them out one at
it's a great gunfight. Yeah, they're outnumbered, yet they know how to work together. They're jumping behind stuff. You're over here, I'm over here. It's great, like outsmarting the guys and getting them. And we got the classic shot of the guy getting shot on top of the roof and falling down like you get in every Western. And really fun scene.
And what's his face? One of the lines before they did, they said, "Hey, were you going to die alone?" And, so basically he's like, "No, of course I'm not going to die. We're going to work together." Basically. So they take out all the guys, and Angel Eyes is nowhere to be found. He's the only one left, but he's gone. I mean, he leaves.
Yeah,
and he leaves him a note.
This is actually my favorite line in the movie. Yeah.
He leaves him a note.
Tuco goes to read it, and you get the idea. Tuco can't read so good. He can go to school, and his brother did. He's like, "Eat, and then Blondie looks at the line and says,
"Hey, see you soon, idiots."
He said he's like, "See you soon, and Blondie looks at it and says, "Idiots, it's for you."
It's for you, yeah.
It's the best one-liners.
They really mix the drama with comedy.
Every time like there's a gunfight or there's a dramatic moment, you get something really funny after it. Every time in this movie.
And once again, they get captured. Again, they get captured. I mean, this
is the big battle scene I was talking about. So they actually get captured by I think he's a general in the field, or at least a high-ranking soldier, and they're staging a battle. And you get, he's a captain. Okay. And this guy, he's drinking, he's a kind of an alcoholic leading this battle charge. And this character was inspired by General Grant from the Civil War. It's kind of based on that character.
And this guy, he's basically had enough. All he wants to do is drink. This guy, drunk. He's running an entire army.
Yep.
They do
very much a comment on Grant there.
Yeah. I mean, and this war, and he starts talking to him about this bridge. For whatever reason, this bridge is the key to the war. Yeah. And if we get the bridge, then we're going to win. And if they get the bridge, then they're going to win. And it's like this old friggin' rickety old bridge over this creek. You're like, what the
but that's where they can run munitions through. Like that, you need to get your munitions from one side to the other, and that bridge is the only way to do it. And whoever's got more munitions on their side, is going to, have more ammo for all the battles. So that's kind of what it is.
Yeah.
But the guy, he's drunk, and he just like feels like it's all just futile, and it's all just like he's leading the charge and doesn't really understand the point of it.
Yeah, I mean, because Civil War was us versus us. So a lot of that.
It really was pointless, in a way. Even though obviously the Union fought for the right reasons, it's still it was the highest casualties for any American soldiers because they're all American soldiers, and it was such a waste of life.
Yep. So what happens is these guys are like, okay, well, how do we get this to stop so we can get across so we can go find the graveyard? Well, what if we blow up the bridge? And wouldn't you know it, there just happens to be some explosives, some dynamite right by them. And so they're like skulking around trying to.
Yeah.
They got like a gurney with the dynamite on top of it, and they're trying to go, and they eventually get it to the bridge, and they blow up the bridge.
Yeah. This
and,
great, huge explosion. You can see where Sergio Leone finally had a bigger budget. And this was one of I want to blow up a bridge. This is one of the things I'm going to do in this movie. And yeah, it's a really cool moment. Maybe a little bit of a reference to Bridge on the River Kwai, but a little bit of that flavor there.
Oh, yeah. Very, very, very similar to Bridge on the River Kwai. So they get in their little bungalow or little huddle thing so they don't get blown up. But then when they go out there and they start walking, everybody. Not one person, not 10 people, not 50 people. Everybody is dead.
Mm-hmm.
And there's bodies all over the place. And they get across, and they're still not at the. They're still not
getting closer to the graveyard, but not
getting
there
close. Yet. But they take a break, and they end up getting a horse. Somehow they end up with a horse.
Is this the moment between Clint and the dying young soldier? Is that at this point?
Oh, yeah.
Because that, to me, again, is one of the important, we actually get kind of a human moment for Clint. Kind of like we had with Tuco with his brother, but this is just a little moment where there's a young soldier, a battle's just occurred, and he's been shot and he's dying. And Clint, who's always smoking cigars, his signature cigar, the Chinchorrillo or whatever it's called, cigars that he always smoked, which actually Tuco used to track him earlier. That was how he tracked him, was from his cigar. So he's smoking a cigar, and then he gives it to the boy who's dying, this teen soldier, and he gets to smoke it, and he gets a smile on his face. And then, of course, he passes away. And it's like you actually see this he isn't a bad guy. He actually does have a bit of a heart, and you see the humanity there with Clint. He's not just this desperado out for money. There is something more to this character. And I think that's an important little moment before we go into the end of the movie with the final face-off, that we get this little humanizing moment for him.
Yeah. Well, this really does shows you who the character is.
Yeah.
So when you do get to the end of the film, you understand the choices he makes. But Tuco, they end up with a horse, and Clint goes off, does something or whatever, and Tuco decides he's going to escape on the horse because he knows the graveyard.
Yeah.
But we know that he doesn't know what's on the grave. Mm-hmm. So even though he knows the graveyard, he can't find the grave. So you see him running all over the place looking for the grave, but he doesn't know what the grave is until they make a pact. Mm-hmm. They decide they're going to make a pact with one another.
Yeah.
I'll tell you the graveyard. You tell me what's on the grave. So he tells him the graveyard. And he says the name on the grave is Arch Stanton.
Arch Stanton, and the graveyard is Sad Hill. Yes.
So now he knows Arch Stanton and the graveyard. So he starts running around. He's looking for Arch.
Breaks
Stanton.
off on the horse, gets to the graveyard, and then this is probably my favorite scene in the movie, which is, it's actually, the sequence is called the Ecstasy of Gold. So he knows the grave, he's in the graveyard, and Tuco's running, and it's the dizzying, whirring camera movements as he's running through the graveyard, trying to find the grave. Cameras whirring around him, and it's this amazing piece of music by Ennio Morricone called the Ecstasy of Gold. It's just ramping up, and then finally sees the grave, Arch Stanton. The music stops, the camera stops, everything stops, and it's just it's an amazing moment in the film.
And then when he thinks he's found that, Clint Eastwood comes up behind him and he says, "Hey, you're not going to get in there. You're not going to find anything in there." And he throws a shovel down. He says, "Dig down there. Go ahead. You ain't going to find anything in there." And then he realizes that there's nothing in there. Then up comes Angel Eyes with a nicer shovel. He's got a prettier shovel, and he says, "Dig." And he's like, "No, because that's not where the gold is." And he basically, he doesn't tell him where the gold is. But what he does is he ends up shooting Angel Eyes. There's a standoff between.
So yeah, what Clint does is he says, "You know what? I'm going to write the name on the grave on this rock." So goes to write it on the rock, sets it down. They all go to different sides of this like central, circle in the middle of the graveyard, this like open area, and they're all on different sides of each other. They've all got a gun, and it's like whoever's left standing is going to be able to get that rock and get to the grave. And it's one of the great, like we've seen a lot of one-on-one shootouts in movies, but this 3-man shootout is so great. The way that it's shot, so suspense as we're just ramping up and ramping up. And this is where we can kind of see that Sergio Leone was inspired by the samurai movies, like I said, Yojimbo, because it was always a big buildup, and then when the sword fights happen, they're real quick, they're over real fast, and that's the same thing here. Like we're building up to someone's gonna get shot, and that's just I love that way of having kind of an action scene where it's all build up, it's over real fast, and it's all about building up to it. It's all about the anticipation.
And I forgot to say another line that goes back to it, keeps coming back in the movie. The two line, and this time it goes, it's two kinds of people: those with loaded guns and those that dig. That's
after. I don't think we're to that yet. Actually, no. Right. So first the shootout.
Yeah, after the shootout,
and then I'm trying to remember. So obviously, we get to the end. Clint shoots Angel Eyes. Angel Eyes isn't fast enough. Gets shot. Falls down and actually falls into a grave, which I always thought was so awesome. Like he just falls right into an open grave. And then I'm trying to remember, who did Tuco try? He kind of tries to shoot both of them, doesn't he? And
what happened was they were both going for Angel Eyes, but when he shot Angel Eyes, he went for Clint, but he didn't have any bullets in his gun.
So he goes to shoot Angel Eyes, and then he goes to shoot Clint, no bullets in his gun.
Yeah.
So and then afterward we get he goes to Clint and he's like, why'd you unload it? And that's when we get the great line payoff, because remember, before it was Tuco, it's two kinds of people in this world: those who come in through the door and those who come in from the window. Now it's flipped. We get Blondie. There's two kinds of people in this world: those with loaded guns and those who dig. You dig. And as only Clint could deliver it. And then he's like, well, where's the grave? And he picks up the rock. What did he write on the rock? Nothing. No. You didn't write anything on the rock. It's the unmarked grave next to Arch Stanton. That's what Bill Carson. I always love that little twist. Bill Carson told him it's the unmarked grave next to Arch Stanton. Yeah, and of course he had that information, so he still had one more thing over on the two of them, because they wouldn't have known. They probably wouldn't have been smart enough to figure it out, because they would have seen the rock with nothing written on it and been like, "Well, he screwed us," But it's the unmarked grave. That's how he knew where to go.
Yeah. So once he gets rid of Angel Eyes and he gets him, and he says, okay, you're starting to dig. So he digs up the gold, and there's 4 bags of gold. Like he did before, he wants to give him his fair share. He wants to keep his fair share, and he wants to give him his fair share. But he's got a twist on it. He's going to put him on a chair.
You get that great pan up. Like Tuco's so happy he's got the gold, and then the camera pans up. There is a arch and a noose hanging that Clint has put there, and he's like, "No, you're gonna have another hanging, my friend. Just like the old time's sake, it's gonna be another hanging."
And the chair is this rickety chair.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, Mo, he ain't gonna be able to stand on this thing. He's going to hang himself, and he keeps yelling, Blondie, Blondie.
So Clint rides off with his share of the gold, leaves 2 bags, half of it with Angel Eyes. Not with Tuco. Tuco's on the chair with the noose. He's sitting there. Slowly, we hear like these drum beats of boom, 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 almost like a heartbeat. It's so well done as Clint slowly travels up the hill on his horse. It's getting desperate. He's slipping. His eyes are starting to bulge as the noose is tightening. And then finally, as he gets up to the hill, and it's like, I love the shot, because it's like you see Tuco so far away, you feel like there's no way in a million years he would be able to make the shot. But of course, it's Clint. He can make any shot. He takes the rifle just like we saw before at the beginning of the film.
And he saves him.
Shoots the line. Yeah, shoots the rope. Just needed time to get away. Just needed to get some distance from him, and so he could get off on his own again. And now leaves Tuco there with the money, and then this iconic ending.
But the problem is Tuco has no way to get the money
Yeah.
back. He's
Yeah,
got
he doesn't
two
have a
bags.
horse. He's gonna have to figure this out. He opened one of the bags, so the coins fell out. He's got the two. He's just stuck there. He's gonna have to find a way to get out of there with the money, get through the war. You know, he just kind of got stranded again, and so he's got the noose on his neck. He goes running up. You know, looking up to where Blondie is up the hill, and says he actually had called him earlier in the movie. I had called him a son of a bitch, and so he goes to yell. You know, he's gonna yell again. He says, "Blondie," and his voice is echoing. "You know what you are. You are," and all the time the music's been building. The drum, the bump's been building and building, and right when he says, "You know what you are. You're a son of a." That theme kicks in, cuts them off, so you don't hear the actual word. We just hear the theme, and the music plays, and oh man, it's goosebumps just thinking about that ending. It's just so beautiful. I don't know how they even came up with it. It's so great, and it's these guys are just back where they started before. Now they've got the money, but it's just like it's just all happening. It's just going to be another thing with these guys. They're just always going to be tangling with each other and getting one up on each other over and over again, and it's just a great way to end it.
Yeah, no, it really is. I mean, you knew that it was going to be something like this was going to be the ending of the movie, because he wasn't going to take his money. He's not that type of going to give him his half of the money.
But you knew Clint was going to end up with the upper hand. I mean, it's
Clint. That's how he did. Like, he took the bullets out of the gun while he was at the camp.
Always smarter.
He took the horse, but he took the bullets out of the gun while he was there. So he knew you could take the horse and go to the graveyard all you want. There's no bullets in your gun. And when they had the standoff, he knew that he was going to shoot Angel Eyes because he knew there was no bullets in his gun. So he always had the upper hand no matter what they were doing. Even when he was almost dying in the desert, somehow he figured out a way to have the upper hand.
And one little thing, like, there are people who have the theory that when Clint rides off at the end of the movie, that he's actually riding off to the events of Fistful of Dollars. So it's actually setting up the other, like, now he's going to go off and have that story will happen. So a lot of people kind of piece it together that way.
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah. I mean, well, it's a man with no name trilogy. So
whether or not they're actually connected, I don't know, but you could certainly make a case that they all happen in the same continuity, or maybe they're just three different stories. Who knows? But, there's certainly people make those connections. I just want to say, I never said earlier, but I just think it was so amazing that Lee Van Cleef plays this kind of sympathetic, heroic character, and for a few dollars more. And in this movie, I just think he's one of the most cold-blooded, like, evil, great villains ever. And you really see if you watch the whole trilogy, you see his versatility as an actor. And I think the other guys get a lot of the attention. I think Lee Van Cleef's pretty underrated. And he really brings a lot to these movies too. So, and what a great villain.
Oh yeah, I mean,
and I think he really is kind of the inspiration for Hans Landa in Inglourious Basterds, because he's a soldier in the war. He's a high-ranking officer, and he's interrogating people and going off on his own little whims for his own, gain. And I think that character was an inspiration there for sure.
Oh yeah, I could go on and on and on about that 15 minutes at the beginning of Inglourious Basterds. It's one of the most incredible scenes I've ever seen in my entire life.
Oh yeah,
I mean, there's so many things you could watch it over and over, and there's so many little nuances and little things.
But so many references, so many callbacks. Like, these movies, this is the whole genre of spaghetti westerns inspired, Quentin Tarantino so much. That's why he made Django Unchained, which is a direct takeoff of the original Italian western Django, which actually was the same year as A Good, Bad, and the Ugly. It's a movie I also really love and recommend, by the way, Django. So if you ever see the original Django, really good movie. It's just a little bit. So just a little thing on that movie. That movie is, you get this guy, Django, his name, you know anything else about him, and his shtick is he goes from town to town and he's always carrying a coffin on his back. Everywhere he goes, he carries a coffin. What's in the coffin? Why is he carrying a coffin? And then later on in the movie, they reveal what's in the coffin. It's so great. I'm not going to spoil that one because we're not doing that movie, but watch that movie and see what's in that coffin. It's pretty great. And then, all of these movies are really a lot of fun. Like, I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about the other two spaghetti westerns that Sergio Leone made later that are also great. So it's a cool genre. And you would not have the Hateful Eight, Django Unchained, even Inglourious Basterds and Kill Bill. Without these movies are part of that, and they influence a lot of filmmakers. You have Robert Rodriguez's Desperado movies are largely inspired by these films. There's so much that they inspired, and they re-inspired American films. Clint Eastwood went back to Hollywood, made a lot of westerns, and a lot of that came from what he had learned working with Sergio Leone. They informed the films that he directed, because he directed some great westerns like High Plains Drifter, of course, The Outlaw Josie Wales,
Unforgiven.
Pale Rider, and then of course all culminating in Unforgiven, which one would argue is really the greatest of them. So these movies have cast a long shadow, and it was such an interesting thing that these Italian filmmakers, and this movie was largely filmed in Spain. So you've got Spanish vistas with Italian filmmakers, with American actors. It's such a weird alchemy that went to make these interesting movies that were inspired by other movies, and then in turn inspired movies.
Absolutely. So, normally I would say, hey, why is this film so essential? But you basically said it without me asking you, why is this film so essential? But
and it's just so much fun. It's we talked about like the 400 Blows earlier, you and I, and it's like such a heavy movie with such it kicks you in the gut and it kind of makes you cry. Well, this movie's, it's got some emotional moments, somewhat whatnot, some thrilling dark moments, but really this is just it's a really fun movie. It's a big, sprawling, fun, cool movie. It's cool. Really, this movie is like the epitome of cool. These guys with their one-liners and their guns and everything they do. This is a cool, fun movie, and I think it pioneered a lot of that too. Like, we're going to see a lot of characters later on. We're going to get the Stallones and the Schwarzeneggers of the movies with their one-liners, and these guys are cool. And that this movie is a part of leading up to that, and that it's so fun to watch still for me. It's slower paced. It builds. It's a different kind of story than maybe we're used to now, but those elements are there, and you can connect the dots, and it's a fun movie, and it's one that I always love revisiting, and it's unique, it's different. Tell them a little bit. Let's talk just a little bit about the next movie Sergio Leone made, because I don't know if you've covered it yet, but I think that's one that definitely I would love to cover as well, and that's Once Upon a Time in the West, which is have you covered that one?
Yep.
Yeah. So that movie, even one goes one step farther than this movie in being this epic, sweeping, making a statement. It's really kind of an artistic expression of everything about the West, and it really showed Sergio Leone even going to that next level of artistic expression and really trying to make a statement and create these epic characters, and then casting Henry Fonda as the villain, and even more evil than Angel Eyes, like just one of the iconic, great film villains we've ever seen. And that movie and this movie together is such a 1-2 punch of these great and that movie it's more artistic, it's more dramatic, it's more elegiac, and the colors, and the score in that one, oh my god, the way that they use electric guitar in that film, and the harmonica, being that the character's name is Harmonica. So definitely see that film. Definitely see Django. Try to seek out some of these movies, because there's some great work going on here. It's really unique. And then he went on to make a movie also called Duck You Sucker, or A Fistful of Dynamite. It had 2 different titles. That was the last spaghetti western that Sergio Leone made, and that one had James Coburn and Rod Steiger, and Rod Steiger playing a Mexican bandit. Unfortunately, it was a thing that happened a lot, but he's actually really good. And that movie's really interesting. That has a really unusual Ennio Morricone score, which is like atonal, kind of odd score, but really interesting. So recommend that movie as well. Just all of them I think are really good watches.
Yeah, that is in the book. Once Upon a Time in the West is in the book.
Mm-hmm.
Is that
52? Yeah.
Yeah, and James. God. Henry Fonda and Charles Bronson.
Charles Bronson, and then Jason Robards.
Yeah,
Jason Robards is Cheyenne. Cheyenne is kind of the Tuco character in that.
Yeah.
And he's got some great lines, and he's kind of got that character. And then the beautiful Claudia Cardinal is kind of she really is the lead character in that. Like, I feel like she's kind of the emotional lead character. And great film there. Has some of those elements of Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, but kind of goes into a different direction and more dramatic. Such a great film. you know, and then he took a 13-year break and then made his last film, Once Upon a Time in America, which kind of has a similar vibe to Once Upon a Time in the West, but about the gangster, about gangsters and that whole time period in the 20s and 30s. And it's kind of this elegiac ode to that. And that also is a great film, in my opinion, with Robert De Niro and James Woods. So, I love Leone. He was such a great filmmaker. These big sweeping visions that he had that are so unique. And he was kind of like Tarantino before Tarantino, because it's all about movies. Like, you can tell he watched and loved old Hollywood movies, and he was commenting on it, referencing it, like kind of retooling it into his own vision. And that's something that I think inspired Tarantino with what he did and other filmmakers. And Guy Ritchie and other filmmakers, they take these movies they love and they make it their own, take it into their own realm.
No, you hit the nail on the head. These guys are going to inspire other filmmakers to do things, and we have friends that they're in film school, and you don't know what they're going to turn out to be, what these people, all these different people that go to film school where they watch these movies and say, well, I want to be a filmmaker. And then now we're getting this whole new group of young filmmakers, or maybe they're a little older, but they're relatively new filmmakers. Mm-hmm. They've only had 1-2 films under their belt, but now they're becoming the new big name filmmakers that are going to have these 20-30 filmographies, and they're going to be the ones that are inspired by the Quentin Tarantinos and all these people that are out that did have these great filmographies.
Yeah,
Christopher Nolan.
They're going to take the stuff that they love and then use that to tell their own stories in their own ways. And that's how art works.
And we really do have a new era of people that are starting to take what is great about film from all these different eras and turn it into something new and interesting. And that's why it's such a great art form. It's one of the great art forms.
Yeah.
Music and movies and TV and probably painting, I guess, are probably the 4 great art forms you can really think of. And they're never going to go away unless the world goes away. I feel like there's always going to be movies. And because of great filmmakers like Sergio Leone and his vision that he had, how can you not look at that vision and want to emulate it and want to take bits and pieces of it and turn it into your own thing, like Quentin Tarantino and Robert Rodriguez did. So that's why these films, are so essential, and that's why, the book had the 52 must-see movies, and I would argue maybe some of those aren't necessarily as essential as some of the ones that we nominated, and maybe some of these ones that we obviously. Once Upon a Time in the West was in the book, so that was already part of the book, and so now you say, okay, now you get another Sergio Leone classic that's in there, but Clint Eastwood is a whole thing in and of himself that is spawned off of
Charles Bronson's great, but he's not Clint Eastwood.
No, so and what Clint Eastwood has created off of the character of the Man with No Name trilogy is one of the most incredible things, because he did it with Dirty Harry, and that's a police officer. Then he did it with more, like you said, all these other westerns. So it really is incredible, and that's why obviously this film meant a lot to you, and that's why we had an opportunity to watch it. And like I said, I hadn't watched it in quite a while. It was the first time I watched it, probably 10 years or so. So many films to watch, you can't watch everything. But I was glad to have the opportunity to talk about this film with you, Jeremy. I'm glad.
It's always fun. Always glad to be here.
Yeah, it is a long movie, so we're having kind of a longer conversation. This is probably
3-hour movie, guys.
longer conversations we've had. But Jeremy, where can you be found?
You can find me, Jeremy Paul Adams, on Facebook and YouTube. I have my own videos on there. And I also am a head question writer for Movie Trivia Leagues on Worldwide Movie Games Network on YouTube and Facebook, and also Full Metal Media, where there are live trivia matches you can watch and even participate in, and some other content there that you can check out. All movie related.
And you can find me at Dan Skip Allen on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Pinterest, or at cinesportstalk.com, where I write movie reviews and sports articles. That's cinesportstalk.com, cinesportalk.com. So for Jeremy and myself, good night.